This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
Not too hot, not too cold, but today's jobs report may not be just right either. And now it's up to the Federal Reserve to decide if the time to hike is fast approaching. Grinding up the coast, Hurricane Matthew hits Florida hard. We'll assess the damage and give you the latest on this mammoth storm. And Bright Idea, meet the entrepreneurs who are taking the frustration out of pharmacy visits so you can get the medicine you need quickly. Those stories and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Friday, October 7th. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Matheson. Sue Herrera has the evening off. We begin tonight with jobs, an issue important to Wall Street, to Main Street, and of course to Washington. Today we learned that the economy created 156,000 of them in September, with the unemployment rate ticking higher to 5%. But the monthly report was a bit puzzling. Some liked the number, calling it solid. Others described it as disappointing and lackluster, and some just said it was modest. But what does the Fed think of this latest number? Hampton Pearson takes a look.
In September, job growth slowed for a third straight month. From a revised high of 252,000 jobs in July, a big drop to just 167,000 in August, and an even further slide, with employers adding just 156,000 new workers last month. Good-paying professional and business service jobs led the way with 67,000 new hires. Hourly wages, now just under $26 an hour, are up 2.6% year over year and are showing signs of accelerating. Today, Fed Vice Chair Stanley Fischer said today's jobs report was pretty close to Goldilocks.
What it did today, the participation rate went up, the unemployment rate went up. Those two things are fine. It means employment was going at a rate that is fully consistent with keeping unemployment declining somewhat further.
More than 440,000 Americans did come back into the job market last month, but only about 95,000 got hired, triggering an uptick in the unemployment rate to 5%. Leading economists point out that it's the slack in the labor market Fed Chair Janet Yellen has cited as a reason to hold off on raising interest rates.
This recovery has more room to run, especially when there's no hint of inflation yet.
It does not appear today's jobs report has moved the needle as far as the debate inside the Fed on the timing for raising rates. Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester says the slowdown in job growth does not mean monetary policymakers should wait.
I see that the inflation measures are moving up. We have to be forward-looking. So in terms of our two goals, monetary policy goals, I think it makes sense to move up the rate another 25 basis points.
This is the last jobs report before the Fed's next policy meeting in early November. Investors say today's weaker than expected report decreases the likelihood of a rate hike just 1 week before the presidential election. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.
Ethan Harris joins us now to talk more about today's jobs report and what he thinks it will mean for the Fed. He's co-head of global economics research at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Ethan, welcome back. Good to have you with us. I want to look at one number within the number, and that was something that Hampton just mentioned, and that was the number of new job seekers who came sort of off the bench and into the market. That was one of the reasons the unemployment rate went higher, but isn't that really a good sign that people are feeling more optimistic about their job prospects?
Yeah, I mean, this was a good report. I mean, you had two pieces in it that I liked. One was that wage increase. We're finally getting out of this 2% rut we've been in for wage growth. And the other was the participation rate. People coming back, feeling more optimistic about the job market and willing to look for a job. So that's a sign that we're in the later stages of healing in the labor market.
So, does this imply anything to you about the third quarter economic growth numbers? We've had growth that's been 1%, 1.5%. Is the third quarter likely to be better?
Yeah, I mean, we had a pretty soft start to the year as companies cut back a lot on their inventories and cut back on production. But the third quarter is looking okay. We're looking at growth close to 3%. These jobs numbers are consistent with that kind of growth. So the economy's been looking a little bit soft to start the year off, but we're starting to get back on track.
So what's next for the Fed and when?
I think they're very likely to hike in December. I mean, something has to come along to stop them. We saw at the September meeting that they got close and they had several dissenters at the meeting. I think that the people who are still on the fence at the Fed just need a few more months to decide. I do think the Fed will hike in December.
Talk to me a little bit about what, if any, impact this mammoth storm might have on economic numbers in the fourth quarter. Does it mean higher economic output, lower, nothing?
Well, what happens when you have a storm like this is that there's a temporary disruption to activity that then comes back on board, and usually the rebuilding effort slightly more than offsets the weakness. So what you tend to get in the data is that the month of the storm, you may see a little weakness in the numbers, like fewer housing starts and a little less retail sales in the regions impacted. But once they get back in business, people move back to their prior activities, and you get the rebuilding spending.
Right.
So storms, ironically, are actually slightly stimulative in the long run to the economy.
Ethan, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Ethan Harris with
Thank
Bank
you.
of America Merrill Lynch. Well, on Wall Street today, stocks did close lower following the release of that employment report and a slide in oil prices. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 28 to 18,240. NASDAQ off 14. The S&P 500 lost 7. For the week, stocks suffered their first weekly decline after 3 straight weeks of gains. Well, Hurricane Matthew battered parts of Florida, though it could have been a lot worse. That said, there was a tremendous amount of damage and power loss. Morgan Brennan is in Daytona Beach tonight.
This is Atlantic Avenue in Daytona Beach, and as the worst of Hurricane Matthew has pushed through here and is heading north along the coast, we're getting an early look at some of the damage here in the area. Now we've got cars beginning to move through, mainly first responders, a lot of fire trucks, police cars, and utility trucks. The street signs, or street lights I should say, are still out. On the next block, you even have a business where the entire roof was torn off. Throughout the area, we have debris everywhere, including, take a look at this big piece right here behind me. Where did this come from? Across the street, the Hilton Hotel. This is as part of the facade was ripped off during the storm. Those 2 holes flanking the signage were windows. At least one of those windows came crashing down and smashed to smithereens over here in the landscaping. This is the hotel where we have been staying all day, and this is just the damage in the front. On the other side of the hotel, the beach side, even more damage. You have flooding due to storm surge earlier in the day, waves that came up over the beach wall, ripping the guardrail on that beach wall. We had a dock that detached and floated down into the surf. The historic Campbell Clock Tower sustaining damage as well. Something of a landmark in this area with some of the clock faces cracked and pushed in. And all of this is just the outside of this particular property. Inside, damage as well. Water coming through the light fixtures, and in the lobby, a lot of soaked towels. Not to mention, even on the upper floors, water in some of the carpet. Those staffers here saying that initial take on the damage for this property, that they expect this hotel could be closed for some time. And this is just one of many in this area and throughout the eastern coast of Florida that have been affected by Hurricane Matthew. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Morgan Brennan in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Well, as Hurricane Matthew continues on its path, and it does this evening, people are bracing themselves and points north. Scott Cohn is in the port city of Savannah, Georgia tonight.
The center of Hurricane Matthew is still several hours away from Savannah, but we're already feeling the impact. The hope is that the storm will stay offshore like it did in Florida, but they're not taking any chances.
Federal troops pouring into the streets of Savannah to enforce a dusk to dawn curfew as thousands of evacuees prepare to flood out.
Let's not underestimate how dangerous this hurricane can be.
In Savannah, some people walked for miles to catch the last bus out of town to Red Cross shelters.
Me and my two boys, I don't know where they're taking us, but we came from over off of Victory by the Freeman Freeway by Whole Foods, and we walked down here to get to the transit center so that we can get on the bus today.
How far a walk is that?
We left our house at 6 o'clock this morning.
The biggest worry is water. More than a foot of rain in the forecast on top of the storm surge, the wall of water that comes with a hurricane.
The surge is what scares us. If you get an 11-foot surge on and the road out there, Highway 80 to Tybee is about 2 foot above, 2 foot above the ocean, then you got an issue.
The port of Savannah, one of the busiest in North America, is shut down. No operations on or offshore until at least Sunday. And it's not just people evacuating. The Air Force moved A-10 fighter jets from southern Georgia to the Florida Panhandle and out of harm's way.
As many as 500,000 people in Georgia alone evacuated ahead of Hurricane Matthew. There's no telling when they'll be able to get back home. Scott Cohn, Nightly Business Report, Savannah, Georgia.
Still ahead, EPIPEN maker Mylan settles with the Justice Department and the stock soars in late-day trading. Mylan agrees to pay $465 million to settle Justice Department charges it overcharged Medicaid for its EPIPEN treatment. As part of the deal, Mylan does not have to admit any wrongdoing. As a result, Mylan lowered its full-year earnings outlook, but shares of the stock rose in after-hours trading because some expected the settlement amount to be larger. The U.S. has officially accused Russia of political hacking to interfere with the upcoming elections. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Homeland Security say they are confident that the Russian government directed the recent attacks against the Democratic National Committee and others. The U.S. added that given the scope of the breaches, only the most senior Russian officials could have been behind them. The election is less than a month away, and the race is tight in the key battleground state of Ohio, where there's a clear division among voters.
I'm going to vote for Hillary.
Why are you voting for Hillary?
I think she's a better choice.
And what's your biggest issue?
Competency. I'm going to vote for, not for Clinton, that's for sure.
You're not voting for Clinton?
Yeah.
So that means you're voting for Donald Trump?
Yep.
Why are you voting for Donald Trump?
Because he aligns with my political values.
The economy, of course, an important, maybe the key issue in the Buckeye State, and that's where we find Andrew Ross Sorkin.
With the presidential election just a month away, Ohio is living up to its status as a battleground state.
Do we love Ohio? Do we love Ohio?
Hello, Akron! Winning this Rust Belt state has always been vital in getting to the White House. No Republican since Lincoln has won the presidency without winning Ohio, and no Democrat since John F. Kennedy. The Buckeye State has voted blue 3 out of the last 5 presidential elections. But Donald Trump is now slightly ahead in the polls. Clinton surrogates say his temperament is still a major factor for undecided voters.
It's about this nation. It's about Donald Trump, who has offended women, who has made a mockery out of reporters who have disabilities. I have no problem defending my surrogate.
The economy is a key platform while candidates stump here. Ohio's unemployment rate is below the national average, but jobs are still top of mind for voters in Columbus, as are taxes. Millennials are now just as large a political force as baby boomers, both generations making up roughly 31% of the electorate. They're focused on some different issues.
Student debt is really important for people our age. It's something we're really concerned about after graduating, and something that we want to see politicians talk about.
I don't know that I feel safer abroad than I do 8 years ago. I'm going into the Marine Corps, and it's just, eventually the next president's going to be my boss, so I want to know who's going to do a better job.
The candidates face off again in a debate on Sunday, which could end up deciding which way these 18 electoral votes will go. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin in Columbus, Ohio.
Well, as Andrew just mentioned, voters in Ohio and across the country will be watching Sunday's debate to hear the candidates detail their positions on jobs, taxes, trade, and other economic issues. John Harwood tells us what Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are likely to say when they go head-to-head.
They may not be the focal point of this very unusual campaign, but economic issues did play a significant role in the first Trump-Clinton debate nearly 2 weeks ago.
We need to have strong growth, fair growth, sustained growth. We also have to look at how we help families balance the responsibilities at home and the responsibilities at business.
You are going to approve one of the biggest tax increases in history. You are going to drive business out. Your regulations are a disaster, and you're going to increase regulations all over the place. And by the way, my tax cut is the biggest since Ronald Reagan.
So here are some of the key economic specifics that may come up in their second debate on Sunday night in St. Louis. First of all, on taxes, Hillary Clinton wants to raise top rates on estates and high-income earners. Donald Trump wants to slash taxes across the board, even though he would significantly expand the deficit. On trade, Hillary Clinton says we need smart, fair trade deals. She says she doesn't support the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Donald Trump says rip up NAFTA, renegotiate it, and get rid of the TPP. On regulation, Hillary Clinton wants to build on Obamacare and the climate change efforts by President Obama, both domestically and around the world. Donald Trump says end Obamacare, lift climate change regulations, get rid of the Paris Agreement among nations around the world. Now, the stakes are especially high for Donald Trump in this debate because of how poorly he did the first time around. Check out these poll numbers. In the national average of polls before the first debate, he trailed Hillary Clinton by roughly 2 points. Now, more than 10 days later, he trails by more than 4 points nationally and is behind in almost all the key battleground states. For Nightly Business Report, I'm John Harwood in Washington.
Boeing lands a big order from the Middle East, and that is where we begin tonight's market focus. The company has inked a deal with Qatar Airways for up to 100 planes. The contract is for 40 wide-body jets and a letter of intent for 60 more narrow-body aircraft. If the full order is completed, the deal would be worth about $18.5 billion. Boeing shares slipped nonetheless, 0.5% to 133.85. Verizon reportedly wants a $1 billion discount on its deal to buy Yahoo or scrap it altogether. The New York Post says Verizon wants to lower the nearly $5 billion price tag on the pending deal because of Yahoo's lack of transparency over its recent data breach and allegations it spied on emails for the U.S. government. Verizon shares were off a fraction at $49.92, while Yahoo dropped 1% to $43.22. And Camping World debuted on the New York Stock Exchange today, pricing more than 11 million shares at $22 each, which was the midpoint of the expected offering range. The recreational vehicle company raised $250 million and said the profits from its initial public offering will be used to trim debt. Shares rose 2% to $22.50 on the session. Pivotal Research downgraded Tyson Foods from a buy to a sell, saying a class action lawsuit filed earlier this month against the meat producer over a potential price-fixing scheme could pose a problem for the company. Pivotal also slashed its price target to $40 a share, down from $100. Tyson off nearly 9% at $67.75. Well, our market monitor likes metals and energy stocks, among others, and has names she says have rebounded nicely, in some cases from a year ago. This is her first time on the program, so please welcome Donna Wilson with Invesco Quantitative Strategies. Donna, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
So what did you think of the jobs number today, the overall report?
Pretty much uneventful. I know the market reacted somewhat negative to it, but generally I think that when you look under the hood and look at the details, it was a solid report.
It's been a pretty good year for the market, and you've got some stock picks that have done pretty well, and in one case has doubled so far this year. Let's start with your big one, which you say is kind of a more safety play. It's going to split in two soon. Tell me about it, which one it is and why.
Alcoa. So we like Alcoa. It has really strong, the management has made some really good decisions in terms of splitting the company into two separate organizations. That is should lead to good kind of value play going forward, unlock the value that's there.
Better to buy it now or to wait until it splits?
Oh, now's
the time to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you think this transformation is a good move?
It's a good move, and I also think it's not just a commodity play. They are going to truly benefit from the growth in the aerospace industry, and that's a key component of their growth strategy.
Number 2 is a mid-cap stock. We'll call Alcoa a big cap. It's called Commercial Metals. Tell us what they do and why you like it.
Commercial Metals primarily makes steel bars that reinforce concrete masonry structures. We believe that it's a great infrastructure play. They're also going to benefit from anti-dumping tariffs that were levied this year against China. So it's going to create a more level playing field for them here in the U.S., blocking China and allowing them to compete and really benefit from that infrastructure in the build out in the U.S. Sun Belt.
These first 2 picks, Alcoa down a little bit over the past 12 months, Commercial Metals up a little bit. We'll call them flat-ish, okay? Your next one, Encana, an aggressive play, up 100% this year, or 1 year up 28%, but it's a strong performing stock.
It's a strong performing stock. What we really like about this name is that they have great acreage, Permian Basin, Montney, Duvernay, so good acreage, good producing acreage. They just did a equity offering, and that has raised significant capital for them to shore up their balance sheet, invest in future growth. And from that perspective, we believe that the next 3 to 5 years, they have huge potential to produce from their wells.
So Encana, Commercial Metals, and Alcoa. Donna, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
I'll have you back. Donna Wilson with Invesco Quantitative Strategies. All right, coming up, ever go to the pharmacy only to find out there's a problem with your prescription? It might not be covered or even paid for at all. One startup found a solution and turned it into a fast-growing business. His bright idea is next. The health insurer Anthem says it will not cover the FDA-approved drug to treat Duchenne muscular dystrophy. As we've been reporting, the drug developed by Sarepta was okayed last month despite a dispute within the agency over its effectiveness. Anthem, the nation's second largest insurer, calls the drug experimental. Shares of Sarepta fell 6% on this news and says it is aware of Anthem's statement. As for other insurers, United Healthcare and Cigna say they are covering it. Humana is evaluating the clinical merits of the treatment. Well, more and more prescription medications require so-called prior authorizations. These days, 250 million times a year, insurance companies do take a second look before coverage is approved or declined. And that sort of scale got the attention of 2 entrepreneurs from Ohio. They had the bright idea to bring the approval process into the 21st century.
Kent Station Pharmacy, this is Peter.
Even a small-town pharmacist like Peter Deprill in Kent, Connecticut, sees it happen. Prescriptions placed on hold, requiring prior authorizations, or PAs, before insurance companies will pay for medications.
All the time. Every day. There's at least one every day, if not 5 every day.
Prior authorizations force doctors to decide whether to prescribe something else or ask an insurance company for an approval. That used to mean phone calls, forms to fill out, and faxes to be sent.
It could be a week or 2 type of situation. And, sometimes the patient doesn't need the medication anymore.
Enter Cover My Meds. It's software that supplies the forms, then auto-populates them with patient records. Once Deprill hits send, it helps put pharmacists, doctors, and insurance companies all on the same page. Now headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, Cover My Meds was created by a former pharmacist and a software developer.
That's what patients said when they're frustrated with the processes. Why won't they just cover my meds?
Columbus native Matt Scantlin was building software and websites before he teamed with one of his top customers, Sam Rajan, back in 2007. At the time, Rajan was helping to run a successful pharmacy benefits manager.
The aha moment for us is when we decided to put a prior authorization on multiple sclerosis drugs. We found that 40% of our patients never went on the drug.
He learned that most feared they couldn't afford to pay for the drug without coverage. It became imperative then to simplify and speed up the approval process. Instead of sending patients off to fend for themselves, Rajan and Scantland wanted to tell patients, okay, we've got this for you.
When a doc has an all-drug, all-payer solution, that's when the adoption and viral adoption model really came about.
We've now helped 42 million people.
Cover My Meds is free for patients and 500,000 prescribers who use it. It's also free for the 47,000 pharmacies using it. Its paying customers are insurance companies and those pharmacy benefits managers who hope that Cover My Meds can help reduce the costs that build when patients don't take their medicines. Cover My Meds won't discuss exactly what it charges, saying only that it cuts the average cost of each prior authorization request from roughly $40 to less than $10.
We've picked a problem that can be solved in a way where everyone wins. The insurance companies are a very important customer for us. They're really the way that all of this has to work.
It's been working and selling too. Cover My Meds doesn't quibble with reports that last year's sales were roughly $100 million. By the end of 2016, they'll have more than 500 employees, and with insurance companies requiring approval on more and more drugs, an even higher purpose.
This company can become quite large because we're solving a problem that is daily life.
Well, more and more states are requiring standardized electronic forms for those prior authorizations, and the Cover My Meds model has often been a key aid to lawmakers during the painstaking process of modernizing our healthcare system. And that is Nightly Business Report for tonight. For Sue Herrera, I'm Tyler Mathisen. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you here on Monday.